And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris, here with my co-host and A to Z Sports Tennessee writer, Zach Ragan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything balls every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that regularly, go to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify and subscribe, because when you subscribe, you won't miss an episode when we drop them on Mondays. YouTube.com, search up A to Z, and you can see the show in all of its glory with graphics, sometimes videos, sometimes pictures that we post up. We used pictures last week. Unfortunately, too much to talk about this week to include pictures. We'll get there. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com to see all of the sad things that we have to write about Tennessee baseball. Let's get to it. Tennessee rubber match with Notre Dame to make it to the College World Series on Sunday afternoon. And the Volunteers lose 7-3. Tennessee's baseball season is over. My sadness is immense. I am inconsolable, Zach. Please make me feel better. What's up, man?
I wish I could, but I'm still kind of in a shocked state, I guess you'd say. I watched the game, just like everyone else yesterday. And on Friday, I was a little nervous after Notre Dame won the first game. I thought, okay, Tennessee's kind of not taking Notre Dame seriously, maybe. Notre Dame's just really pumped up for this series. I don't know, but this is a terrible start, not a good sign for the rest of the series. And then Tennessee has the big win on Saturday, and it eased every concern I had. I was like, okay, this is the Tennessee that we've seen all season. This is going to be just fine. So on Sunday, I never really considered that Tennessee might lose. When they got up early, 3-1, felt like a pretty big lead. Even though it wasn't, it just felt like, okay, they're going to keep adding on. This is going to be another blowout game. They're going to cruise to Omaha. Never considered that it might not turn out that way on Sunday. So the game was over. I kind of just sat there just in disbelief. Like, is this team's really not going to Omaha? This maybe the best college baseball team we've ever seen is not going to the College World Series. And how is that possible? I was just stunned, completely stunned. I'm still stunned.
And just the way that it ended, also, just it wasn't without a fight, but it was quick. And Notre Dame just put Tennessee out of its misery. Just real bang, bang. You're down by 4 runs. Don't worry about it. This game's over. Like, it was the way that it went more than anything. Like, if it was a 1-run game, Tennessee has the winning run on second, and you're at the edge of your seat, and then Notre Dame just makes that play that seals it. And you would go, it was right there. Should have just won it. But you're down by 4 runs, and like a double play at the end there. Like, just how is that the way that this went? That was what shocked me more than anything. How is that the way that this went? Right. I was just like, it was the only game from this entire season that went that way. We went 60 plus games. None of them went like that. No, I mean, was there another one that I'm not thinking of that was like that, where a team actually kind of ran it up on Tennessee a little bit, and then Tennessee just impotently went out without like making much noise? Like, it didn't matter across the board in any game. Tennessee had the wild comeback at Florida, had a couple other games that were like that, where the game against Georgia Tech, where he came back in the 9th inning. Like, this was that team's MO, was right at the end. Even when they went down 4-3, I kind of said, look, Tennessee needs to score. That's what this team does. You're down 4-3. You're probably going to win this game 7-4. Like, that was kind of my assumption. You're going to pour on a few runs in the 7th or the 8th or the 9th. And then Tennessee's going to move on because this is what they do. It's at home. It's at Lindsey Nelson. Like, I wasn't even worried at that point. It was unfortunate. and it sucked because Burns' outing was great up to that point. But I was just like, all right, they'll just get it together. Maybe that's a little shock to the system that Tennessee needed in this game to wake them up, and they'll roll them here in the last couple innings. And it just never happened. Like I said, it was a kind of game that happened one time this entire season, and it just so happened to be the game that was the rubber match for the College World Series. And it just is. Oh, Zach, we've talked about it so much. Like it feels so Tennessee. I hate to say that, but does it not just add to the psychological torture that has been the last 15 years? It's terrible.
Yeah, it's very easy to make that conclusion, and it's this. I mean, I think it's the way pretty much all Tennessee fans felt after that loss. At least if they're being honest with themselves, is here we go again. Great team, come up short, can't finish it off. We've seen it. The 2016 football team, the basketball a couple of times over the last few years. Some of the great teams that Rick Barnes has had, they don't do well in the tournament. Kind of follows that same narrative, but really, this isn't something that's unique to Tennessee. I mean, I think we all saw the stat yesterday that the number one team in the country hasn't reached or won the national championship since 1999 when Miami did it. So this is something that is common in college baseball. We talked about it throughout the season to some extent that, anything can happen in June. That's just the way baseball goes. And when you're the number one team in the country, you play with the bravado that Tennessee played with this year, you're going to get every other team's best shot. And for Notre Dame, I mean, I'm not going to say this was their World Series because they actually are going to the College World Series and have a chance to win it all. And they look like they might. I mean, they're a really good team.
Yeah.
They have good pitching. They have good bats. They're getting hot at the right time. They got a lot of momentum. It wouldn't surprise me if they leave Omaha winning it all. I mean, you just don't know. But they were definitely up for this series. I mean, they knew who they were playing. They knew the history. They knew the season, how it had gone, the reputation that Tennessee carried into this weekend, the Super Regional. And I think that's probably something that happens with a lot of number one teams and why, baseball's such a weird, funny sport where it's so much to do with momentum and just the vibe of the team. Like all these players are talented, but part of why Tennessee's been so great is because of the culture that Tony Vitello's created. Now that culture, I think, got him in trouble a little bit this weekend. I think, we saw Drew Gilbert arguing the strike call. It was the first strike of the at bat on Friday night. He gets ejected when he says some stuff to the umpire. I thought it was a little bit quick to eject Gilbert based on what he said. He didn't really say anything personal at the umpire. He just said it was a terrible call, effing horrible call, and then he was gone. I mean, I felt like that was a quick hook. But at the same time, I think Gilbert's got to know in that situation, it wasn't a great call. Maybe you turn around to the umpire, you say, hey, it looked a little low and inside to me. What did you see? You can do that. That's acceptable, and you do that in the right way. The umpire, I think, had a little bit of ego. I think Tennessee's reputation impacted that call a little bit. I think he kind of went into that game knowing that if Tennessee did something like that, he was gonna toss him. But Gilbert being out hurt bad on Saturday, but I think the part that we don't really talk about is Frank Anderson, the pitching coach, getting ejected on Friday night also. I mean, he's got to know he can't run out onto the field in that situation, and that's not helping your team at all. He's suspended for the whole weekend because he's been ejected already this season. And I think that came into play some Sunday, because if there's one criticism I have of Tennessee this weekend, as far as strategy goes, it's the way Tony Vitello deployed the pitching on Sunday. I thought that he should have pulled Chase Burns after 6 innings. And I know there's a lot of people, I wrote about it, and there's a lot of comments like, well, okay, this is hindsight analysis, and anybody can say that. And that's true. I get it. But I kind of felt that way going into the 7th inning because it was his 3rd time through the order. Analytics show across baseball that's a tough spot for a pitcher. I mean, you see MLB guys get pulled out of games 5-6 innings in the playoffs because they don't want their pitcher facing the order for a 3rd time. Opponent's average usually goes up pretty significantly when that occurs. The other thing is that Burns only completed 7 innings once this season. He only went beyond 6 innings 3 times and got pulled in the 7th inning 2 of those times. So it's not like he had a history of going 7 innings and beyond. Considering the situation, the strength of Tennessee's bullpen, you're not playing the next day. You don't really have to worry about saving arms or any of that. I mean, we didn't see Ben Joyce. We didn't see some of those arms that they have. And once Notre Dame got that momentum and scored in the 7th inning off Burns, even after the first home run, I felt, pull him then. The ground rule double, home run. Clearly they're seeing his pitch as well, continued to go with him, and Tennessee just got in a deep hole they couldn't get out of.
It's tough for me to criticize Tony Vitello. And I was surprised yesterday at how quick people were to criticize Tony Vitello. There were some people on Twitter specifically that immediately went to, this is Tony's fault, and blah, 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 really ripping him a new one. You're not even close to the situation that you are in without Tony Vitello. Let's start there. He is the guy that built this roster. He has done a phenomenal job across the board. No baseball coach is going to be perfect in in-game coaching. There's so many factors in a baseball game where things can go wrong. In that situation, I came away thinking I see it both ways. Baseball is very much a game of feel, and Burns is feeling it. He had an incredible outing up to that point. Through 6 innings, he was coming off, I believe, if I'm thinking correctly, coming off a 1-2-3 inning. Just a real clean bang, 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 3 outs. He's coming off that in the 6th. And then going into the 7th, you're thinking, this is it. Like that was my thought. It's just like, this is the end for him. He's wrapping up a really, really nice game. Then we'll throw in, I mean, who came in after? It was
Kirby, I believe, came in to relieve.
Yeah, and Sewell. Or was it Sewell first and then Kirby? Either way.
Yeah.
But I am okay with leaving him in there. And he got 2 outs. The home runs happen with 2 outs. So he gets 2 outs, and you're thinking, all right, here comes a third. Knock him out, and we're done here. You give up the home run, and this is where I kind of go, all right, you should have just pulled him, probably. Hindsight 2020, because actually at the time, I even texted some friends of mine. He gives up that home run, and it was a fine pitch. The pitch with the home run, and it barely squeaked into the corner. That's not a home run in a whole bunch of other stadiums. That's a home run because Lindsey Nelson is small, and it just squeaked right in there in a corner. It was a guy who had only hit 1 home run all year, just like a freak thing. And you go like I could even see the rationale there being like, all right, let's just stick with him. Let him ride out this final out. We're tied. It's not great, but we're still going to win this game. I absolutely see that being the attitude. And then you give up the home run on the next. I would say I didn't see that coming. I thought that Burns would have just gotten that final out and rolled. Woulda, coulda, shoulda across the board. I have a hard time giving Tony Vitello a bunch of grief over this because, again, you're not even close to this without Tony Vitello. He is the God King of Tennessee baseball right now. I'm just not, in a magical season where you won the SEC regular season and an SEC tournament championship, and you had just done things that Tennessee baseball hasn't done in so long. The guy's not a bad coach. You make mistakes in a singular game, but the guy's a great coach. Like that's the bottom line that I walk away and I just go, yeah, you can woulda, coulda, shoulda all day long. But I also go in that scenario, Tennessee needs to score more than 4 runs. Ultimately, you would have needed 8, which is not an easy ask, but it's certainly something Tennessee has done on a bunch of different occasions this season. Make no mistake about that. I mean, the bats stunk it up in that game, and there's a lot to be said about that too in this analysis. But I can't lay it on Tony there. There's only so much that you can see and do. And was Frank Anderson's absence a huge piece of that? Would Frank have pulled him at that point? You don't know. There's so many unknowns in that way. So I just, it's a tough loss, and these things happen.
Yeah, when I think about that I think Burns should have been pulled, I don't think that like Tony Vitello failing to do that indicates that he's some sort of bad coach or doesn't know baseball or doesn't have a great feel for the game. But great managers, some of the best managers of all time in Major League Baseball have been criticized for making a certain bullpen move late in the game. I mean, ultimately, you really don't know how it's going to turn out. It's up to the player to execute pitches. It's up to the opposition to put together good at bats. I mean, somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. If that ball stays in the ballpark, that first home run, if he gets that out there, Vitello looks like a genius. Nobody's questioning anything, even if there was some loud contact. So I don't think that I don't think in any way that okay, maybe he made the move that he should have done this instead of that, but it's just baseball. It just happens. It's not an indictment of anybody as a coach or how they are going to manage the game going forward. I mean, you're right. The only reason they're there is because of Tony Vitello. He did an incredible job of building this team, of keeping the morale at the right place or at the right level all season long. I think what we did see on Sunday was the first time this year that Tennessee was really pressing in their at bats. Like they were
Oh
just,
yeah.
especially late in the game, those at bats just weren't as competitive as what we typically see from Tennessee. Just some like it was the first time I felt like they felt that pressure, and it's because they knew what was on the line. Like, hey, this magical season is going to come to an end if we don't put up 4 or 5 runs right here. And then all of a sudden, if you're in that mindset, it's really hard to really stay loose and come through and execute in those at bats.
It's crazy to say, and this is I'm not putting any blame on any singular player for this game, but it's crazy to say like a more level head from Drew Gilbert would have been good in this scenario. He tries to steal second, really not smartly in the
Terrible,
eighth.
terrible. Like, yes, in the
Yeah,
eighth inning, you're down four. You go base to base in that situation. The
and
outs are
he
too valuable.
and it's what you're saying. They were pressing. He's thinking, I gotta get into scoring position. I get this is urgent. You know, we're behind. This is crazy. Down by 4. We got to score, and he makes a mistake. And
The same with
that's
his throw from center field when he threw behind the runner. Now that ended up
uh,
working out, that circus play where the runner gets thrown out at third base. Fortunately for Tennessee, your left fielder makes a good throw there, but he should have never thrown behind that runner. I went back and watched that play several times. The runner took a hard turnaround first. If that runner would have decided to go back to first, he would have beat Gilbert's throw back. Because one, it wasn't a great throw at all, but two, he would have got back to first safely, and he made a decision as soon as he saw Gilbert let go of the ball. He instantly took off for second, forcing another bad throw. And that was kind of when Gilbert tried to steal second, he hesitated big time. So there's a big difference there in the base running between Notre Dame and Tennessee yesterday as well.
Tennessee's fielding in general was suspect. I would say. I mean, Notre Dame was just trying to steal all bases all the time. They were moderately successful. Got picked off a couple of times, but I don't blame this. It was a smart move on their part. Obviously, they won 7-3. You know, and what they did worked. Um,
And they
but
had the
the
lead at that point. You can kind of you can kind of take some risk when you're in that situation. If you
yeah,
have the lead, put pressure on the other team, which is what they were doing.
I mean, there's so many things that you can go hindsight 2020 on and go, why did they do that? I hate to chalk it up to this, and we said this before the tournament ever started. The only thing that could really bring down this Tennessee team is just like that's baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball's weird. Like that's and it turns out realistically that was it. The bats went cold and the fielding was terrible all in one day. And it just happened to be the most important game of the year. Like just shoot me in the face. I mean, that's if that's not the most Tennessee of Tennessee things, I don't know what could be. Um and so it is another in a long line of crushing disappointments. But here's a question I had planned on making this kind of the overarching theme of this discussion about the baseball team and this loss. How do you view this season? Because you can say, well, the goal was a national championship and they failed. But was the season a quote unquote failure? It's two I think you know what I mean by that. It's two different things. What is your take at a almost 1,000-foot view here?
Yeah, I don't see the season as a failure at all. I think when your goal is a national championship across the major sports, football, basketball, and baseball, I think success is defined very differently in each of those sports. Football, it's harder to win a national championship, but at the same time, it's I don't know, it's more black and white. I mean, the best team usually wins the national championship in college football. The team that is the best all year long typically almost always wins, or one of the top two teams at least. Like, you're not going to see these, one, because of the format, but you're never going to see these Cinderella teams, even if the playoff expands, you're not going to see the 20th ranked team in the country knock off number one Georgia or whatever. So that's a little different. If you're Alabama and you set out to win a national championship and you make the Sugar Bowl, big disappointment. College basketball is a lot like college baseball. The best team doesn't always necessarily win. Sometimes it happens, and sometimes it doesn't. Like, we've talked about it before with Rick Barnes. You get to the Elite Eight, Final Four. I mean, that's kind of your goal every year, and then whatever happens. I think baseball is kind of similar. I think your goal is to get to the College World Series. Winning a national championship, there's just too many factors that go into that have to happen. That things have to go your way, whether it's an ejection, a call an umpire makes that you have no control over. There's just so many factors that go into it. So many ways to lose a baseball game. So many ways. I think the season was a wild success. I mean, you brought tons of attention to the sport on a national level. We talked about it before, how many baseball social media accounts are tweeting about Tennessee and posting about Tennessee. It's tons of attention, not just to Tennessee, but the sport in general. It was a fun year. I mean, this is usually a dead time of year, but from late February until early June, we were just transfixed by Tennessee baseball. And it was fun. It was a fun journey. I've always said baseball is more about the journey of the season than the actual final result. So, some team that was kind of middle of the road is going to end up winning this thing this year. And they weren't, whatever team that is, wasn't the best team in college baseball all year. That best team was Tennessee, regardless of what happened this past weekend.
We are very much on the same page as far as this conversation goes. You made a lot of the points that I will also. It was a season that set Tennessee in a position that this Tennessee baseball program has effectively never been in. It took the program into a stratosphere that is really rarefied air and really one, like I said, one that has never been seen with Tennessee baseball. Like, they have never been this relevant. You had people writing things during the season, not just saying, "Oh, this is the best college baseball team of all time," blah 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 blah, but saying things like having such a divisive but powerful team is great for the sport of college baseball. You had those sort of takes where, like, this Tennessee team is elevating college baseball as a whole because it's appointment television. You want to watch them to see their antics and to see the things that they do. And they as much love as the team got, they got that much hate also. And they were this really polarizing kind of phenomenon. And you can never take that away. That's not a championship, but it's just true. And the main thing with that is that it pays dividends in the future because you established yourself in a way that is extremely visible to recruits, to transfers, and building for the future. You had an amazing set of seniors that sadly, there's a decent chunk of these guys that are going to be gone, but the set of players coming in and the set of players that are returning is phenomenal. You got Maui Ahuna, the shortstop from Kansas. He's going to be coming in. Tennessee is very much in the running for the kid from NC State, White.
Yeah,
what's the kid's Tommy White. Tommy White. I mean, you talk about, you make those two additions. It's two of the best players in America coming into Tennessee next year, on top of the solid recruiting class that they have, on top of the great set of players that are returning. Chase Dollander coming back. He was the best pitcher in the SEC this year. Chase Burns coming back. He'll only get better. Like, all of these guys, Drew Beam coming back. He'll only get better.
Blake Burke.
Blake Burke. I mean, that kid's going to hit 100 home runs for Tennessee next year. Like, the foundation is set here, and you go, Worst case scenario, this is just a learning curve. Like Tony Vitello, how many coaches ever have been under the kind of pressure that Tony Vitello was under this year? It's an insane situation. And when you're fighting that like best team of all time and all of this pressure and having to manage that with these guys, and there's guys on the team that have big egos and a lot of bravado and all these things, and like he's in that position. Not to give him an excuse, you still lost for sure. You did not win a national championship, and that's a disappointment. You didn't even make the College World Series, which makes it a particular disappointment. But you won the SEC, you won the SEC tournament, you did things this team's never done, and you set a foundation that is phenomenal. And I think is setting Tennessee on a path to be essentially a superpower in college baseball if it is managed correctly. And that, how am I going to go and say, oh, that's a failure? That's not a failure. That is not a failure in the slightest. It's disappointing. I wanted to win a national championship more than anything right now in sports. I want that so badly. But you're going to be competitive for a national championship for years going forward. Like this team is not going to drop off a cliff next year. I think there's an argument to be made that it could be just as good. And, that's kind of a station later on, closer next season. But like there's a ton to be hopeful about. There's a ton to be proud of and to take away. And I'm just not going to walk away and be like, oh, this sucks. We should have won a national championship. I'm pissed off. But no, it was a great year. And I can't believe as much of a pessimist as I tend to be, I will certainly walk away from this season thinking fondly of it, as disappointing as that was.
Yeah, I mean, this could very easily be a situation where, because like you mentioned, the program's in great shape moving forward. You got great players on the roster. You're losing a lot of great talent. Jordan Beck, Drew Gilbert, Ortega, Lipscomb,
Potentially Ortega.
Tidwell.
He's kind of on the fence, but
yeah, I think he'll probably be drafted. Well, either way,
probably.
You're losing a lot of talent, but you got a lot. You got the guy, the Ahuna from Kansas coming in, like you said, great talent already on the roster. This could be a situation where kind of like 1997 and 98 with football, where that 97 team with Peyton Manning, they lose to Florida. They don't really get a shot at the national championship. It's kind of a disappointment. Peyton's gone. Your big star is gone. And then T. Martin comes in the next year and leads the team to a national championship. I mean, maybe next year's team, the regular season isn't quite as impressive as this year, but they get to Omaha and they get hot at the right time. I mean, it's going to be just as likely that they win a national championship next year as it was this year, I think, because the talent's going to be there just almost about the same.
Yeah, it's all there. And you never know about like team dynamics. Like this year,
that's huge. Yeah,
led by a couple of guys who were what's the right word? It sounds derogatory, but like hotheads. I mean, they were guys who are in your face. Honcho, Gilbert, like those dudes are gonna scream at you and spit in your face. Like they are just those type of dudes. And you like you said, they are likely gone, even though they're both juniors. I believe they technically could return, but they won't.
Beck and Gilbert are projected first round, and they're as good as gone.
And they should go get their money, and it's a smart move on their part to do that.
Same with Ben Joyce is being projected like last I saw third round, which is really based on the uncertainty surrounding him is what his future in baseball is. Is he a starter? Is he a relief pitcher? But potential alone, he's getting drafted. Probably,
absolutely,
going to be on a minor league team in the next year or so.
Yeah, for sure. But just you shift those pieces around, and does it then fall to Blake Burke? Does it fall to whoever it might be that is in that more senior position to lead that team? Maybe some of these transfers coming in, can be those guys. You never know with those team dynamics. It can be disastrous on one hand. I think with Tony Vitello being the guy that he is, that's something that he's really excelled at in his entire time at Tennessee. I think he can make a team meld like that. So I'm not worried about that.
Do you think there's a scenario where Vitello sees what happened this year? He probably he let the team play pretty loose. He didn't really clamp down on them and their celebrations, anything like that, which I love. But watching the kind of sidetrack here, but watching the regionals and the super regionals, the stuff that Tennessee does was not that different from what a lot of other teams do. I mean, you
I'm
see a lot of
saying.
the same kind of emotion from these other
I know.
teams. I mean, you saw Notre Dame's little home run celebration that they have. It's no different than Gilbert running out there and jumping. And I it's just because they were so good, I guess, this year that people just really enjoyed hating on them. But I didn't see anything just that out of line or anything that really maybe Jordan Beck flipping off the outfielder. But aside from that, but do you think there's like based on what happened with Drew Gilbert on Friday night, do you think Vitello tones it down any next year? Or do you think he kind of goes with the same vibe next season?
I hope not, because I think for one thing, the two guys that were the most over the top are gonna be leaving. And that's one factor. Because I think it's such a huge part of the whole formula with
Hmm.
what's working at Tennessee is letting them be loosey goosey. Like
Yeah.
that is a massive piece in the equation. So please don't don't turn into Tim Corbin. Don't be the drill sergeant. Because that's
Did you see the tweet from Danny Cannell yesterday after
oh
Tennessee
god, what a
lost?
loser. Yeah, me and him had a little back and forth yesterday.
Oh, did you? I missed
Yeah,
that.
we did. I called him the biggest loser in media. Then I said, "So you're not at ESPN anymore. So really, you're not in media. You're just the biggest loser on this website." Uh, I think I probably did see what he said. But what were you going to refer to?
Oh, where he said, "Congrats Tennessee baseball on a great season. So many memorable moments: flipping opponents off, rounding the bases, coach getting tossed for chest bumping the umpire. I completely forgot about that. Crying over balls and strikes, something every single baseball team in the history of the sport has done. And of course, so many pimped out bat flips. What a legacy! Again, we see plenty of bat flips in baseball these days.
What an absolute impotent, just absolute like loser is the correct word. Just sad because I mean, the thing that I was going back and forth with him on is that he was like, he's somebody asked him like, what would you do if a batter did this in front of you, and it was Jordan Beck with the slamming the bat on the ground. He said,
Mhm.
I would beam him on the next pitch or whatever, drill him on the next pitch. Like,
I
oh,
think
okay.
I did see some of that.
So much more classy
Yeah.
to someone with a baseball than to just let them celebrate a home run in your face. Like, how about you don't let them hit a home run on you? How about you throw a better pitch and
Yeah,
then they don't hit a home
exactly.
run?
I've never
God
understood
forbid.
like okay, if you're a baseball team and your star player gets they're throwing inside, your star player gets hit, maybe twice or something. You're probably going to retaliate and throw at one of their guys. That's just kind of one of those unwritten rules in baseball. You don't brag about it. You just go out there and do it. Usually some benches clear. We've seen it a ton. But throwing at the guy after somebody hits a home run, I will never in my life understand that. It's just like when Gilbert got hit in the regional after Jordan Beck hit a big home run. It's like what do we do? Why? Just don't you served up the home run. I mean, that's on you. You
Yeah.
can't blame him. You don't want
It's
him to celebrate, strike him out, sit him down. I mean,
it's
otherwise you got to deal with it.
it's so much worse to give up a home run and then petulantly throw at a kid. Go like, that hurt my feelings. My tummy doesn't feel good, and then I'm gonna
Yeah.
throw at the next batter. You loser! What a lame response. And then to just not give up a home run, like that's so stupid. I and the whole thing. Like there were other fan bases. I would say actually the chirping from other fan bases just because the most vocal fan bases, Arkansas was really the only one that made it into the College World Series out of the fan bases that have hated Tennessee this season. Vandy fans have tried to say stuff, but you can basically just return and be like, we beat you 4 times and you lost in the regional. Like, shut up. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so it really wasn't that bad. But like somebody tweeted me yesterday and they were like, this is karma. Karma? What? Since when is it a bad thing to put out into the universe a celebration for a thing you did? Why is that? Who thinks that's a bad thing? I did a cool thing. I'm going to celebrate. Karma has to come and attack me now? What? Okay. So what kind of karma is Vandy putting out in the world for them to lose in the regional? That's karma. I mean, God, what did they do? You know, was it karma for them checking the bat and the whole thing to see karma? They had to pay the piper for that. Like, what are you talking about?
Mm.
Karma. I hope Tennessee hits 92 home runs on every team in the SEC next year and throws the bat at the head of the pitcher. I don't care. Like, well, obviously, I'm being exaggerative, but you know what I mean. Like, I hope they bat flip to the moon on every single home run they ever hit because it's baseball and it's a game and it's supposed to be fun. Stop being the fun police, you absolute losers. Nobody wants to hear it. You only say it because Tennessee is better than the team that you root for. It's so annoying.
That's one of the best comments I saw on social media after the loss yesterday. Somebody was complaining about opposing fans and this and that. I can't remember who it was, but they pointed out like nobody was talking trash about Tennessee baseball in 2018 or 2019 or 2017 when Vitello first got hired. Like this means that Tennessee's doing something right. The more chirping you hear from opposing fan bases, the more it means that Tennessee's doing something right. So as we've said many times on this show, embrace the hate. It's a good thing. Dive all the way into it and just keep on moving in that same direction because it's Tennessee fans have a us against the world mentality. The rest of the other fan bases kind of give Tennessee fans a reason to have that mentality. So embrace it. Go with it.
I love it so much, and I never want it to stop. Like, please have teams that stunt every year because it's so fun, and it just perfectly fits the attitude of Tennessee and its fans, like you're saying there. Like it is the perfect match with Tennessee fans. We are the trash talkers, even when things aren't that good. Tennessee, we're trash talkers. And so just please don't take a turn into, we have to be more respectful now. We have to, the unwritten rules of baseball. No. Please don't spare me that nonsense. But otherwise, there's a ton to unpack here. Just, I don't even want to get into the psychology of like, oh, it's a Tennessee thing that happened. That's just tired at this point. Tennessee will break through with another national championship at some point in some major sport. It will happen again. Make no mistake. It doesn't only happen to Tennessee. These things happen in sports, and you come back, you get back up, dust yourself off, and we'll be back next year because you won an SEC championship. You still get to buy a T-shirt and get to brag about that. So there's at least that. And then
I said, real quick before we move on, it's the championship falling short of that is disappointing. But the fact that you had these 3 months of just fun, like you can't take that away. And I don't know. Obviously, you want the national championship, but I can't imagine trading these past 3.5 months for anything. Like it was so enjoyable to watch them play. It was the most fun I've had watching college baseball ever, without a doubt. And that's something that nobody can take away. So, don't get too down about it because it was a fun season, a memorable season, one that nobody will ever forget.
And here's something to be happy about. You have to know that ESPN is beside themselves that Tennessee got knocked out. Because you know what they were relying on? Tennessee being in the College World Series for ratings. Because who's going to watch Oregon State and Stanford play in the final? I think they were banking on the Vols. And so there's at least
no doubt.
We can know that ESPN will be sad in this scenario. So no apologies to ESPN. They don't deserve it. They're terrible. And so with that said, anything else with baseball? And then we'll finish with a little bit of football talk, some more good things that happen in general. I think this could actually be a somewhat optimistic podcast. But anything with baseball that you wanted to mention that we may not have?
No, it's very possible that Tennessee will lose one of their best coaches in Josh Elander. It would not shock me if he's a head coach somewhere next season. Really great baseball mind, has a really great feel for the game. Tony Vitello relied on him a lot, which any good manager or baseball coach will do. You got to have conversations with the people around you and surround yourself with great people. That's part of being successful in baseball, is listening to other ideas, looking at things a different way. Josh Elander was kind of that voice for Vitello, and I imagine a lot of other programs are going to kind of want want to replicate. They might hate on Tennessee, but they would love to replicate what Tennessee's done. So that would be a big loss for Tennessee. But it's just something that happens when you play at a high level.
Anytime you're good, it's like Saban. He loses like every assistant coach he has every offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Just part of the game. But speaking of football related things, some stuff happened with Tennessee recruits in particular. We're still not quite to the point of talking about actual football analysis where we're gonna, who's on the defensive line, offensive line, what did the wide receivers, what are we thinking about? But that's coming up. And I thank you. Shout out to Tennessee baseball. They got us almost there. If they would have made it through the College World Series, we would have only been a few weeks away from fall camp. But still, it's not going to be a super long off season. But let's do talk recruiting in the meantime. Nico Iamaleava was at a 7-on-7 tournament over the weekend, 5-star quarterback commit to the University of Tennessee. And Zach, you wrote about this some. What happened? What was notable there?
Yeah, he was at the event in Las Vegas, and On3's Charles Power, who I guess covers recruiting for them, had a nice write up about him from this weekend, and really, I don't know, it just made me feel even more confident in Nico, because I've kind of thought about this. Like, there's so much hype surrounding him being the recruit that received $8 million allegedly. Just the hype surrounding him. It's everything's been pretty much focused on that, like the financial aspect of it. But it's like, okay, how good is this kid though? He's a 5-star quarterback. Harrison Bailey was a borderline 5-star quarterback and kind of flamed out at Tennessee and transferred to UNLV. But is Nico going to go down that road, or is he legit? Is he one of those can't miss prospects? I'm starting to feel more and more like he is a can't miss prospect. He's got the physical tools. Power talks about how he was accurate, fitting the ball through tight windows, a lot of zip on his ball. Said pretty heavy winds at the 7-on-7 tournament didn't really affect Nico throwing the ball because he's got such a great arm. But more than that, he pointed out that Nico really just his leadership abilities and the way that he interacted with other teammates and his demeanor. And he said he's constantly elevating the players around him, that plays real mature, but also loose at the same time. Kind of that baseball mentality that we talked about, where you can't play tight. You can't be pressing. You can't put too much pressure on yourself. So it's like he elevates the play of those around him, was my biggest takeaway. And I think that's so important for a quarterback. I think that's what makes Joe Burrow so great. I mean, we've seen other quarterbacks with way more physical tools than Joe Burrow that can throw the ball further, that are faster, that may be more accurate. But Burrow's just got that kind of special thing about him that he makes everybody else around him better. He makes people believe. He made the Bengals believe they can make a Super Bowl run, and nobody would have predicted that before the season. And you see some of those same traits in Nico, because you've heard it from other places, and it's consistent that we're hearing this about him, that he's just such a great teammate and a great leader. And Tennessee hasn't really had a great leader at the quarterback position in quite some time.
I mean, yeah, you look, Dobbs was really the last one. And what did Dobbs do for you? Beat Florida, beat Georgia. He's the best quarterback of the last, 15 years,
Yeah.
realistically speaking, for Tennessee.
And Tyler Bray had more physical tools than Dobbs. He couldn't run like Dobbs, obviously, but he had a bigger arm. He was just a more naturally talented quarterback, but he didn't have that leadership ability, and that, like we're talking about with Nico. And that's my biggest takeaway from all of this weekend.
Absolutely. Anything like that makes me feel so much better about a recruit, because there's been such a formation of a culture around recruiting that is all about, these kids getting clout. And I don't blame them for that. You're 17 years old. You have thousands of people telling you you're awesome. And you feel yourself. And you go like, I am awesome. I want all the social media followers. I want to be that dude. When I show up, I want to be the starter. I want to get my playing time and all of this. And it's really built up a culture of that. And you can, we can talk about the pros and cons of that whole thing at another time. But it's made me cynical about a lot of recruits, because there's so many guys that show up with that kind of attitude and then they flame out. And and so anytime I see something like that, I go, that's a red flag. I don't like that. They're talking about social media a little bit too much. Talking about social media more than they're talking about football. I don't like that. That kind of thing. And to see these sorts of accolades coming out for Tennessee's biggest recruit. Obviously, we have talked at length about how he is recruiting for Tennessee really actively and really seriously and doing an incredible job there. And we're going to get to a big development there here in just a second. But we've talked about that, but to see outside of that whole, he's recruiting for Tennessee thing, to see these accolades for him as a player, as a leader. And it's not about how he wants more followers on Instagram. It's about how he's a leader on the football field. And he has this charisma and he has these traits that have historically made quarterbacks great. It makes me I don't want to put too many expectations on the kid, but it makes me feel differently about him than I would if it was just a 5-star designation that he had. Like, that is one thing, and that is incredible. But these added things just take it to a whole other level where I go, man, that's a good sign. That's a really, really good sign, and it's something that you want in a player, and especially a quarterback, because that's a signal caller. It's the leader of the offense. It is the guy with the ball in his hands on every single possession and every down. Like, that is the dude you need to be the leader with the charisma and to bring those traits to the football field. And to see it already for a kid that's 18 or whatever he may be, it's huge. I love seeing that, and it's nice to hear, even though we haven't seen him play a down of football yet.
Yeah, he does seem extremely mature for a kid that's still in high school. You see interviews with him, and he's talking about other recruits. He's talking about his younger brother. I mean, he's really never making it about himself. He's always building those up around him, and I think it has a lot to do with his background. His dad gave an interview to The Athletic last week, I think, or the week before. He kind of talked about that Samoan background and just their culture and how one of the big points they drill home is that nobody's ever bigger than the team, no matter what. And Nico's going to be the most high-profile athlete in Knoxville the moment he steps on campus. He already pretty much is. He's going to have these huge expectations. It would be very, very easy for him to have a big head and to be kind of arrogant, but we haven't seen that from him, and I don't think we will because of that background. I mean, that's just something that they make a priority. You're not going to act like you're bigger than the team. It's a team sport at the end of the day. It's about winning a championship, and that's kind of the mentality that he's going to bring, and why, just another reason. I don't want to say any players bust proof because there are no sure things. We've seen some great players not pan out, but if you've got to make a wager on will Nico pan out or not, I can't imagine that you would bet against him in his development.
It is always a gamble with any player, especially with one that has this much hype coming in. But if a kid is going to have this much hype, this is the type of stuff I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's kind of the bottom line, and it's what you're saying there. Like, yeah, nothing's a sure thing, and he can still come in and be a bust. But I am feeling better about him not being a bust than I do for a whole lot of other players. Some guy, I mean, genuinely, I think everybody who's listening to this and follows recruiting decently close knows exactly what I'm talking about. That some of these kids do. And you go, that kid's attitude is just not like, he is not going to come in and work hard. You just know it. You see it with some of these guys. Like, you just know he's not going to be that workhorse dude that's out there, first guy on the practice field and last guy to leave. Like, you just know they're not going to do that. and some guys are so talented that it doesn't matter. That absolutely happens. But if you get the combination of the talent and that kind of drive and that kind of leadership and that kind of maturity, man, that's a phenomenal combo. So hopefully he does become that, and that's good stuff. Was there anything else with that? Because then we'll move on to this Carnell Tate news also that's sort of tangentially related to Nico. But was there anything else with Nico?
No, just when you talk about the bust and stuff in college football, I think we see so many 4- and 5-star busts at times because they're really just being evaluated based on pure athletic abilities. And there's a reason that NFL teams take weeks and months to debate prospects and have them in for interviews, and they ask these questions. We see them on Twitter all the time, these dumb questions like, if you were in an ocean and there's a dolphin and a seal drowning, which one do you save first, or something completely absurd like that. I mean, there's stuff that they can glean from those answers because they're trying to figure out, is this kid going to work hard like you're talking about? So it's like Nico is passing all of those tests. It's something that I don't think teams, it's hard for them to take into that stuff into account. It's not like you can go out and talk to every kid's teammate, every recruit's teacher. You probably have a look at their grades and can tell a little bit about what kind of student they are, and that tells you a lot about what they'll do on the field. But I think that's one of the reasons we see so many 4 and 5 star players not pan out, is because these things just aren't taken into consideration. And I think that stuff's highly important with every recruit, but especially at the quarterback position. So it almost feels too good to be true for Tennessee, but maybe it's just a sign that things are going in the right direction and going to turn around soon.
Hopefully. I do always say, like, when you talk about the NFL and you talk about the NBA, these pro leagues, the big difference is that it is a job. It is an occupation. They expect you to essentially clock in 9 to 5, and you are gonna work hard and you're gonna do the things that you need to do. And if you don't do them, we will fire you. Like, that is it. And the thing is that nobody likes to say it, but it is true. College is the same way. It arguably shouldn't be. There should be a learning curve, but when you come in and you're playing in front of millions of people on national television and in front of 100,000 people in an SEC stadium, and that's the expectation, and it's a program that generates billions of dollars, and all of this stuff that comes with college football, it's effectively the same. And to really truly succeed, like I said, there's some guys with so much talent that it doesn't matter. But to really truly succeed, if you are not that guy, it's a ton of hard work. And it is clocking in 9 to 5 and put your nose to the grindstone. And you want to see those traits in some kids. I mean, like some of the perfect examples, their dad just worked. He just worked. He has the track record at Tennessee. And that's a difference in this. Who is willing to be that just carrying the briefcase guy? Clock in, clock out, get the work done, do what you got to do. And so hopefully Nico is that. We shall see. But on that note, Nico, a guy that he has been recruiting very hard, is Carnell Tate, a 5-star wide receiver, according to the on3.com consensus rating, a bona fide 5-star, the number 2 wide receiver in the class of 2023, the number 15 player nationally, the number 4 player from the state of Florida. He has a 51% chance of choosing Tennessee. Nico Iamaleava has been heavy on this dude, trying to recruit him to the Vols. He has visited Tennessee, and they have made the hard sell to him. Now, in this last week, I believe he said on Instagram he will be announcing his commitment soon. We were hoping, admittedly, with the history of the show that we've had, we were hoping that during this recording he would commit. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but maybe let's knock on some wood back here. We have a few minutes left while we talk about him. And what happened there with Carnell Tate, Zach?
Yeah, I think really nobody. It's between Tennessee and Ohio State pretty much. Notre Dame is kind of lingering there. I think he's originally from the Chicago area and goes to IMG Academy in Florida, where so many players have transferred to. It's kind of like a pre-college experience because you're living in dorms and this and that. But I don't think anybody fully knows, because NIL is going to factor into this pretty heavy. I know nobody wants to really talk about that and think about it, but Tennessee and Ohio State are both going to give Carnell Tate a good NIL deal to go there. So I don't think this comes down to like who's paying the most money, because I think that market's starting to kind of set itself, where we're kind of starting to hear like what players are getting or going to get or expected to get. I think it's going to come down to legitimate recruiting ability. Now, Ohio State's a tough school to beat. I mean, you got Ryan Day up there. He's done some great things at Ohio State. They're usually in the playoff or right on the cusp of the playoff. Tennessee's kind of trying to get to that level, but then you've got a player like Nico who's kind of spearheading this class and really wants Carnell Tate, is close with him. There's other players at IMG that Tennessee is heavily after. I lean towards Tennessee winning this still. I think there's just too many positive things that have been said about Tennessee, the visits he's taken, who he's been surrounded with. It wouldn't shock me if Ohio State wins this battle because it's recruiting and it's very fluid and can change day to day. I mean, nobody ever really knows what a recruit's going to do. Even when they've told you what they're going to do, they still often do the opposite of that. So I don't think there's any really good, strong predictions that have been made about Tate that are going to be 100% accurate. But my feeling is that it's probably going to be Tennessee. You know, maybe it's kind of getting closer to decision day, so some doubt creeps in there because you just, like I said, you just truly never know. But I think Tennessee's going to win this one.
I really hope so, because this is just we talked about Francis Maujoa last week, and Carnell Tate's right in that same group of dudes who are they're an earth mover as far as a commitment, like a guy where other recruits look and they go, all right, they got Nico, they got Carnell Tate, I'm gonna hop in because this is good. This looks really good. Like they're really going somewhere with these guys, and it's just I mean, you can't say enough. Like this would be an invaluable pickup. You do never know with these guys because there's so many different factors. It could be, I have no idea what his home life is like, but like mom wants him to go to Ohio State, but he really wants to go to Tennessee. Like there's so much stuff that can come into play there down to the last second. But what was it exactly that he posted on Instagram? You posted it on Twitter. And I think, did he say that his decision has been made? Like he's made his mind up and he just needs somebody to make his recruiting video, I think was what he
Yes.
said, right?
Yeah, that's what he said. And he didn't really, he just said like next week or two. So really could be any moment. Like we have no idea when it'll happen.
And the whole like making a commitment video thing is interesting to me. So like he finds somebody to make it. And I've seen like some of these recruiting services will do it so that they can get an exclusive on the commitment. I think the ethics of that is kind of questionable considering what they do. But at the end of the day, it's just college recruiting. I don't think it's that serious. It's not like it's, insider trading or something, but um, you could question somebody's objectiveness if they were to make a recruiting video for a kid. Nonetheless, it doesn't really matter. But I want, like, who do you go to? Who is making these? Because there's so many different, like now with the NIL stuff, you've got like some of these collectives are running clear. I think kind of clearly, if you sort of pay attention, they're like running Instagram accounts and they're running Twitter accounts that have access to these kids. They clearly like they let the recruits like take over their social media and answer questions on the social media and stuff. So is it going to be like those? Will it literally be like the collective that makes it? I don't know. But somebody, if Tennessee is who he's chosen, get on that quick. With somebody, help him. Get him a video. Somebody, quick.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, in the past, we've seen like the recruiting services do it. We've seen Rivals help out with stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
you see, even if it's not a commitment video, you see all the time, like Rivals or 24/7 Sports will have a pre-taped interview with the kid explaining his decision that obviously had been taped days before.
Yeah.
So it is a strange thing. Like, how do you report on what a kid's going to do without spoiling his moment and still kind of trying to be objective? It is a strange, I think the recruiting reporting world's a strange world anyway that I really would never want any part of. It's a weird kind of grind where we talked about it before, but you got to text 16 and 17-year-olds all day and try to figure out what in the world they're talking about or planning on doing. And often you're going to be wrong, even though they gave you good information. It's not your fault. And then everybody's going to blame you, the reporter, for it. It's just it's a thankless job, it seems like.
It is. I am kind of continuously skeptical of all recruiting reporting because a lot of times it is just for, they get an interview with a kid and he says, "Oh, I liked Tennessee a lot." But he's just kind of saying that for the
Mhm.
interview. And
Yeah.
and the recruiting site gets the clicks and that's great and the kid gets the exposure and that's great, but you kind of take it with a grain of salt and you go like, okay, he's just kind of saying that just to be, you sort of have to be skeptical in that way. But I will say with those analysts, a lot of the time, if you see an analyst prediction, and Cardinal Tate does not have any, he has two predictions that were for Ohio State, but they're from like months and months ago. So I wouldn't put any stock in those. I think Tennessee has come on really strong lately with the visits and things with him. Um, but when you see those predictions, like you saw it right before Nico committed, those guys started making predictions, and a decent amount of the time, that's because that kid is like making a commitment video behind the scenes, and like they know that that's the decision that he's made, and they're saying like, "Here's my prediction," when in reality they know in 2 weeks. Like they've pre-written an article and it's already done, and they've done the interview, like you said, like they already kind of know. So it's kind of two things. Like I'm extremely encouraged when I see a prediction like that, and I'm also skeptical of their reporting a lot of the time because I go like, is this really, is this really meaningful as far as how this kid feels? It's a weird world in a strange industry, and God bless the guys that do that as a job, because
I
it couldn't
think
be
if
me.
you're I think if you're in that world and you do it every day, you probably have a good feel for when a player's being honest or when you can believe a player. Even then, you probably still get burned. But I know personally, I don't dive into that world a whole lot when it comes to talking with recruits and kind of on that beat, I guess you'd say. I don't really do that. But there have been times where I've done it, and I remember I went to Shy Tuttle's commitment whenever he committed to Tennessee. I had a pretty good feeling it was going to be Tennessee, but it wasn't a lock. I thought I might be wasting my time. I wasn't sure. And I remember talking to his high school coach before the commitment, and he told me, yeah, he's going to be at Tennessee next year. And even then, I still watched the ceremony and watched him commit, and there was a small part of me that was like, he could easily put on a different hat and go to Clemson or whoever else it was that was pursuing him at the time. Like I never believe it until they're signed, until they have
Yeah.
signed and they're enrolled. And even now, thanks to the transfer portal, that doesn't even mean anything because you can sign and get right out of your national letter of intent and head elsewhere. So even that's not binding anymore like it used to be. So I really, maybe it's just Tennessee sports that are giving me major trust issues. I don't know.
We just lived through one of those traumatic events. Just another one. Oh, here's the national championship team. Not quite. Oh, Tennessee. We love you, even though you
Two,
psychologically
two,
torture us.
two conference championships, a 7-5 regular season in football, the number 7 offense in the nation last year, and we still find a way to be cynical. It's stunning, really.
Always, this is the way for the
Mhm.
Tennessee fan. How can you not be at this point? That's why I always say when people comment on our show or whatever, and they go like, "Stop saying that this is what Tennessee does." Teach me how to think that way, please. I am so scarred. 4th and 16. What are some of the other good ones? Rick Barnes always losing in the NCAA tournament. This with baseball. Like, what am I? How do you do it? Please teach me. I need
Yeah,
the help.
I don't see it ever changing. There's 15 years of heartbreak to erase. That's not going to happen overnight. Tennessee could win every championship in every sport next year, and I'd still be like, all right, so when's the really bad thing going to happen? When's it going to happen?
I do feel like though there is some pressure taken off now that we've broken through the conference championship wall.
Yeah,
That's it's going to be huge for football. I mean, good lord, if we make it back to the SEC championship game, first of all, it means you beat Georgia almost definitely, and that's a whole thing in itself. Um, but with basketball and baseball, you go like, all right, we got that out of the way. I'm not going to be that nervous about that anymore. That's fine, and it kind of takes some of the pressure off of the whole College World Series thing because you go like, we got a championship under our belt. We've done that. That's a nice little release because we had that hanging over our heads for so long. Like Tennessee hasn't won a SEC championship in any major sport in however long it was. I don't even know. I mean, I guess technically it would have been not 98, right? That would have been the last one.
In Lady Vols, outside of that.
Oh, well, I guess men's major sports. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
the Lady Vols won a national championship in 2008, but
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I just need to go to an actual therapist. Maybe that's the that's the move. I don't know.
Tennessee should pay for the therapy. It's their fault. Mike Hamilton and Dave Hart specifically should pay.
I'll send Dave Hart an invoice for my copay for the therapist. I think that's it. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan. Anything else for the good folks at home, Zach, before we head on for another week?
If Carnell Tate commits in the next hour, it still counts because he might be confused in what time zone we're in. So that's just,
I'm almost like delaying. I'm like, maybe let's check Twitter one more time.
Should we filibuster for the next 3 hours here?
But it could just be too soon. So maybe next week is the week.
Yeah.
So he found the video guy this last week. They're going to make the video this week, and then next Monday at lunchtime, commitment time, baby.
Yeah, you got to sleep on it over the weekend. Make sure you're firm in your decision.
Exactly. Just give it till Monday. It's the best decision you'll ever make. I guarantee it. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan, the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I know I've already made the thumbnail for this, and it's going to piss some people off. So it's apologies for that. Let me just say,
but if you actually listen, which if you did, you've already made it to this point. So I'm telling you something that you already know. You won't be as mad if you actually listen to the conversation.
Exactly. Oh, we're going to get so many Facebook comments. How can you say that Tennessee baseball is a failure? We didn't say that. The thumbnail says that. Well, the thumbnail asked the question. The thumbnail just asked the question, is Tennessee baseball a failure?
Yeah.
And if you listen, we're actually incredibly optimistic. So that's your problem. That's it. Thanks so much for listening. A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed, A to Z Sports on YouTube. Rate, reviews, subscribe, click the little notification bell on the YouTube, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. You made it this far. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.